Back in October, all Facebook properties went down for a few hours and the entire internet erupted into panic. For me, it was a timely reminder of the perils of building any element of your business, whether it's membership or not, on rented land. And so it inspired me to record today's episode to remind you of some of the downsides of relying on third parties for key elements of your membership business. So, time to pull out the sandbox. Here we go.
You're listening to the Membership Guys podcast, bringing you proven, practical tips and advice from the leading experts on growing a successful membership business each and every week. And now, here's your host, Mike Morrison.
What's up, everyone? You're listening to episode 336 of the Membership Guys podcast. I am your host, Mike Morrison. Today, I am getting out the sandbox or the drum. I'm going to get lost in metaphors here. Getting out the sandbox, I'm beating the drum, I'm flogging the dead horse about the perils of building your membership on rented land. Now, I'm actually recording this on the 7th of October. We always like to record our podcasts in advance. So it was just a few days ago that all Facebook properties went down. Apparently, it was human error, a pretty dumb one at that, but that error wiped out Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, Workplace, basically anything that Facebook has their fingers into. And it wiped them out for around 5 hours. They basically did not exist as far as entities on the internet. Now, in the grand scheme of things, a handful of social media apps being unavailable for 5 hours, which is less time than it'd take to watch the last 2 James Bond movies back to back, it's not exactly the end of the world. It's 5 hours and it's a few social media apps, people. I mean, come on. However, what it did do was remind everyone involved in the online world of just how fragile this whole ecosystem we all operate in can be when you're relying on someone else's platform or service as a core part of your business infrastructure. And this is particularly pertinent when it comes to online memberships. We see this debate come up frequently. Should your community for your membership be inside a Facebook group, which you don't control? Or should it be an on-site discussion forum, which you do control? Should you use an all-in-one platform for your membership that's provided by a third party like Kajabi, for example, which again, you don't control? Or should you build your website yourself using something like WordPress and a membership plugin, which you do control? So really, should you be building your property on rented land? Now, it's very important to point out before someone gets pedantic and points it out for me, that even if you're building your own website yourself, you're likely still using website hosting and domain hosting that technically you don't own and you don't have complete control over. And there'll be a few things like that within your setup. However, the massive difference is that even with things like that, you do still have an element of control. Even things like your email marketing service. You can't tinker with anything under the hood, but you can absolutely back up and download your email database, move it elsewhere, and so on. So while going down the route of building your own membership, hosting your own site and everything does still involve some pieces of that infrastructure that you don't have complete control over, that you might still say, okay, well, this bit technically is still rented land. It's night and day compared to putting all of your eggs into a basket that you have zero control over. With the self-build, self-hosted route, you still have a huge degree of control compared to building your membership on a third-party platform or using something like Facebook groups for your community. And I keep coming back to Facebook groups because, of course, anyone who had a membership for which the key paid community was a Facebook group didn't have that community, didn't have that bit of their membership for a big chunk of the day. But it's not just Facebook groups. It might be even something like using social logins for your website. So this is where you let people log into your site via their Facebook account or their Twitter account, rather than members having unique account credentials for your membership. If Facebook goes down, like it did, that could wipe out your members' ability to log into your site. And while a 5-hour outage on a social media platform isn't apocalyptic, people being unable to log into your membership for that length of time could massively throw a spanner in the works for you. And it's something you can't control, and that really is the key word we keep coming back to: control. Ultimately, when we talk about not building on rented land, it's less about the dangers of depending on third parties and more about emphasizing the importance of control. When the worst happens, knowing that you have options, knowing that you can do something about it, knowing that if the worst keeps happening, you can move elsewhere. You have options. You're not at the whims of someone else. You're not locked in. You don't go down with someone else's ship. If your website gets hacked, or if a plugin that you install suddenly breaks your site, you can restore a backup. You could pay a developer to go in there and fix things for you. You can actually access, download, upload, and alter your website files, the database, the code. They're yours. You control them. If the third-party service that you use, so the all-in-one platform that your membership is built on, the Facebook group that houses your community, if something breaks with those and everything goes down, you can't do any of the things I just mentioned. You can't go in there and fix it. You can't access the code. You can't switch to a new platform in an instant. Even if your web hosting goes down, which is something you honestly can't really do that much about directly if it happens, you can still do something. You can scramble. You can point your domain name at a different web host where you move your files to if needed. You at least have that control that, again, you don't have when you're entirely dependent on a third party. We cannot, as business owners, underestimate the value of having this sort of control. When you're running an online membership, your website, your email list, and so on, these are your most valuable business assets. They are your business. So the willingness that so many people have to just surrender in control of their most valuable business assets to third parties in the name of convenience or simply following the crowd, that willingness is insane when you think about it. Listen, I'm not arguing that third-party membership platforms, all-in-one platforms, community platforms, and so on are bad. Far from it. There are some incredible platforms and services out there that we frequently recommend to our members. And the ease with which they can enable you to get up and running make them a no-brainer if you simply don't want to have to deal with tech headaches of building your own website, hosting your own website, navigating WordPress and plugins and so on. And the fantastic people who run these platforms that we're talking about, they're not stupid. They're not going to completely implode and melt down if something goes wrong at their end. They have fail-safes, they have processes, they know what they're doing, they're prepared for this in most cases. But your decision to build on rented land has to be an informed one. You have to know that there's risk that comes with it, that you're sacrificing something in order to get that convenience. That convenience comes at a price. The convenience of being able to rid yourself from tech headaches, to not have to think about building and managing your own website. It comes at a cost. You have to know that that's true. You have to think about a plan B. Think about what you'll do if your membership's Facebook group is inaccessible for hours because some doofus at Facebook accidentally deleted a file. How will you reach out to your community? What happens if it doesn't come up after 5 hours? What if it's down for 5 days? How will that affect the live streams that you've been delivering in your Facebook group? How will that affect those? How will you communicate? What will you tell your members? What's your plan B? So this isn't me saying, hey, look, Facebook went down for a few hours. I told you you need to build your own website and not depend on any other third parties. That's not what I'm saying at all. Again, I'm a huge fan of a lot of these all-in-one platforms. Absolutely. And there's even better, fantastic community platforms coming up as significantly better alternatives to things like Facebook groups. So this isn't me saying I told you so, you should only ever build your own website, because that's no foolproof either. But this is simply me urging you to not get too swept up in the convenience, the speed, and the ease that these kind of third-party options offer without understanding what the trade-off is and how the decision to build on rented land can bite you in the butt if you haven't made an informed decision, if you're not aware of, you're not prepared for the risks, you don't know what you would do if all the Facebook properties went down, if your membership platform went offline for a day. So this is just my reminder. This is my kick up the butt. This is my scare you straight kind of moment. If you are using or thinking about using an all-in-one platform like Kajabi, Simplero, like Circle, those fantastic platforms that provide amazing tools that let you get a membership up and running without having to mess with any tech yourself. Don't get too swept up, don't get too seduced in, wow, I can have my membership up in just 30 minutes and I don't have to deal with plugins. I don't need to sort out hosting. All that's great, but just make sure your decision is an informed one. Make sure you're aware of what is lost in order to get the pros, what the cons are in order to get the pros of those kind of platforms and the perils of building your membership on rented land. All right, I'm going to push away that soapbox. That wasn't too ranty, actually. I think that was fairly balanced. It's just one of those things that this happened a few days before I was set to record a new batch of podcasts. And I thought, I've got to talk about it because the idea of being able to have something that is as technically complex as a membership site up and running at the flick of a switch using one of these amazing platforms, it's a seductive path to take. But so many people take it uninformed without even thinking. They take for granted that stuff like this won't happen. But as we saw a few days ago, or at the time you're listening to this a couple of months ago, unless, for all I know, Facebook's gone down every other day since this podcast is recorded. Who knows? Maybe Facebook doesn't exist anymore. What a world that would be. But hopefully this has just acted as a reminder to be more mindful, to be more aware of the trade-off when you use third-party platforms, whether it's for your whole membership, whether it's for your community, whether it's where you do your live streams, whatever. So I hope that this has been a useful reminder, or at the very least has been entertaining to hear me rant a little bit. I'll be back again next week with another installment of the Membership Guys podcast.